Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Maulinda Mukhofifah. I'm from English Education 18. My class is A2. My name is 318018000024. This video, I would like to explain about teaching methods for foreign or second language. Let's get started. The field of teaching a second or foreign language has undergone many fluctuations and shifts over the years. Prior to the 20th century, language teaching methodology facilitated between two types of approaches are getting learners to use a language, for example, to speak and understand it. Then, getting learners to analyze a language, for example, to learn its grammatical rules. Therefore, there are 9 20th century approaches to language teaching. Then there are 9 approaches that I shall be referring to. First, grammar translation approach, direct approach, reading approach, audiolingualism approach, oral situational approach, cognitive approach, affective humanistic approach, comprehension-based approach, and the last, communicative approach. Before discussing approaches to language teaching, I will explain differences about methods, techniques, and approach. Method is a set of procedures, namely a system that describes exactly how to teach a second language or a foreign language. And then techniques is a class device or activity by representing the narrowest of the three concepts. Several techniques are widely used and found in many methods. For example, dictation, imitation, and repetition. And then approach is starting point or our point of view towards the learning process, which refers to the view of the occurrence of a process which is still very general in nature, in which it is very inspiring and strange certain theoretical learning methods. But in here, I just explain for material approaches. The first is grammar translation approach. Grammar translation approach is an extension of the approach used to teach classical languages to the teaching of modern languages. Grammar translation approach focuses on sentence structure, grammar, vocabulary, and direct translation of the native language to English. The objective of grammar translation approach are help students read and understand foreign language literature and help students to communicate accurately and meaningfully. Next, there are 5 learning principles in grammar translation approach. The first is a way of studying a language. Second, reading and writing are the major focus. The third is vocabulary based on reading is taught a bilingual language words list, dictionary study, and memorization. Fourth is grammar is taught deductively. And fifth, the only one is medium instruction. And next, techniques. A grammar translation approach use 6 techniques. The first is at grammar translation approach, students translate literary extract from the target language into their mother tongue. The second, students read comprehensive text and try to find information, make conclusion, and relate to personal experiences. The third is they find synonyms and antonyms for words that appear in the text. And fourth, They try to understand the grammar structure first and then apply it to examples. And fifth, students usually memorize vocabulary to apply it in sentences. And last, they write paragraphs, essay, or summarize on specific topics using target language. And I explain its main features are: the first is teaching is given in the student's native language. Second, there is little use of the target language for communication. The third is focus on the meaning grammar. The fourth is there are early readings of difficult texts. The fifth is translate sentences from the target language into the mother tongue. And six, the result of this approach is usually the student's inability to use language for communication. And the last, the teacher does not have to able to speak the target language. And besides, I explain advantages and disadvantages grammar translation approach. First, the advantages. Teacher needs some specific skills on a specific topic, and students have to memorize a lot of vocabulary, which helps them to make various types of sentences. And the last, grammar translation approach also helps students to improve reading and writing skills in the target language. And then disadvantages are students are not offered to make their own sentences in the classroom, and oral interaction are avoided in grammar translation approach. Next, students can develop their reading and writing skills but fail to communicate directly. And the second approach is direct approach. What is direct approach? Direct approach is action against the grammar translation approach, and its failure to produce learners who can communicate in the foreign language they have learned. The objective of the direct approach is establishing direct bonds between thought and expression, between experience and language. Meanwhile, this is based on the assumption that learners must experience a new language in the same way as that of their mother tongue. In direct approach, there are 5 learning principles. The first is classroom instruction was conducted in the target language. The second, there was an inductive approach to grammar. The third is only everyday vocabulary was taught. The fourth is the learner was actively involved in using the language in realistic everyday situations. And fifth is speaking was taught first before reading and writing. And the techniques used in the direct method are reading loud, question and answer exercise, student self-correct, conversation practice, fill the blank exercise, dictation, map drawing, and paragraph writing. And then its main features are: first, it is not allowed to use the mother tongue, or the teacher does not need to know the mother tongue of the students. Second, lesson begin with dialogue in a modern conversational style. The third, action and images are used to clarify meaning. And fourth, grammar is learned inductively. And fifth, literary texts are for pleasure and are not grammatically analyzed. And sixth, target culture is also taught inductively. And last, the teacher must be a native speaker or have such proficiency as the native language in the target language. Okay, next, direct approach have advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are the learner receives more input the target language than when the language is instructed in their native language. And the learner creates direct illustration between words in the foreign language and concepts in their mind, actions, and situations. And the last, classes have few students, so the seriousness of the learning process can be increased. And then disadvantages are the method ignores systematic written work and reading activities, and sufficient attention is not paid to reading and writing. Next, this method may not hold well in higher classes where the translation method is found suitable. And the last, there are many abstract words which cannot be interpreted directly in English, and much time and energy are wasted in making attempts for the purpose. And the third approach is reading approach. What is reading approach? Reading approach is in response to the problems experienced in applying the direct approach. Reading is seen as the most useful skill to have in a foreign language because not many people were traveling abroad at the time. Only a few teachers could use their foreign language well enough to use the approach directly effectively in the classroom. And next, the objective of the reading approach are the students are able to identify meaning rather than letters or words, and the students are able to understand and read the text quickly, and the students are able to read actively. And next, its main features are: first is only grammar that is useful for reading comprehension is taught. Second, vocabulary is controlled initially based on frequency and usability and then developed. And third, translation is once more a respectable classroom procedure. And fourth, reading comprehension is a language skill that is primarily emphasized. And the last, teachers do not need to have good oral skills in the target language. And reading approach also have advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are reading approach can be used in a big class. In reading approach, students can know much vocabulary because they have to read the passage, and students focus what they are studying because they only learn grammar. And disadvantages are reading approach is only focused on written skill. This approach is lack in the speaking skill. And reading approach is oppressive approach because the vocabularies and grammar are controlled. And the last approach is audiolingualism. What is audiolingualism? Audiolingualism is measures against the reading approach and the lack of emphasis on oral sales or of foreign language teaching that emphasizes teaching, listening, and speaking before reading and writing. The objective of the audiolingualism is accurate pronunciation and grammar, the ability to respond quickly and accurately in speech situations, and knowledge of sufficient vocabulary to use with grammar patterns. And the next is learning principle of audiolingualism. The first is a process of mechanical habit formation. Second, using the spoken form of the target language before written form in classroom. Third, analogy is generalization and discrimination and inductive grammar teaching. And the last, teaching words in linguistic and culture context. And next, its main features are: first, the lesson begins with dialogue. Second, imitation and memorization are used based on the assumption that language is habit-forming. Third, grammar structures are sequenced and rules are taught inductively. Fourth, skills are sorted listening, speaking, reading, writing is suspended. Fifth, pronunciation is emphasized from the start. Sixth, vocabulary is very limited at an early stage. 7. Great efforts were made to prevent students' error. 8. Language is often manipulated without regard for meaning or context. 9. Teachers must be proficient only in structure and vocabulary. Audiolingualism also have advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are the audiolingualism has been based on psychological approach, and next, the original language is not used to teach foreign languages, and thus, no translation is allowed to teach vocabulary. And last, disadvantages. Disadvantages audiolingualism are the audiolingualism does not use translation to teach the target language, and process of learning emphasizes on speaking, and last, students play a passive role in the classroom. Okay, thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.